What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at another instance in church history which I think disagrees heavily with the Protestant Ecclesiology, which is the Meletian schism. So who are the main characters in the Meletian schism? We have Athanasius of Alexandria, who's the champion of orthodoxy, successor of Peter of Alexandria, which is this guy, who is also the patriarch of Alexandria before Athanasius. He was the patriarch or bishop of Alexandria. He wrote a canonical epistle in which he speaks about Meletius. And Meletius is a schismatic who opposed Peter of Alexandria. And we'll explain a little bit more. Okay, how did they schism? Okay, Meletius rejected Peter of Alexandria's authority. We learned that from Peter of Alexandria's canonical epistle. He ordained bishops out of his own jurisdiction. So here's the quote from the Acts of Peter. But even in its villages, he ordained bishops of his own party, nor cared he anything for Peter, nor for Christ, who was in the person of Peter of Alexandria. So he was ordaining bishops outside of his outside of his jurisdiction. He didn't care what Peter of Alexandria had to say, and so he was deemed a schismatic. Okay. And apostolic canons, although these are a little bit later, these are basically the essence of what Peter of Alexandria was enacting against Meletius. Canon 36, let not a bishop dare to ordain beyond his own limits in cities and places not subject to him, but if he be convicted of doing so without the consent of those persons who have authority over such cities and places, let him be deposed, and those also whom he has ordained. So this is I think like a century or two after, but we can see. So Athanasius's response: it is the Meletians who make the accusation, who are not worthy of the least credit, for they have been schismatics and the enemies of the church. So Athanasius deems the Meletians just for schisming because they ordained outside their jurisdiction. This is not any matters of faith. They just ordained outside their jurisdiction. But he calls them enemies of the church. And not of recent date, but from the times of Peter, blessed bishop and martyr of Alexandria. And again in his Contra Arionos chapter, I spelled chapter wrong, chapter 1.11 or chapter 1.19, the Meletians who have ever been schismatics, who have unto this day made disturbances and raised factions in the church. And the most important, this is the crux, Athanasius: but as he who breaks the cup belonging to mysteries is an impious person, much more impious is he who treats the blood of Christ with contumely. Contumely? I don't know how to pronounce that. And he does so who does this? 1 Corinthians 11:25, contrary to the rule of the church. We say this not as if a cup even of the schismatics was broken by Macarius, for there was no cup there at all. How should there be, where there was neither the Lord's house nor any belonging to the church? Nay, it was not the time of celebration of the mystery. So there was a controversy of this guy Macarius, who was part of Athanasius's team, part of the Orthodox group, and he was allegedly he broke a chalice of the Eucharist. Yeah. And that is a very bad, that is a sacrilegious action. And Athanasius is defending him. He's like, no, he did not do it. It's very bad. But even if he do it, or no, he didn't say even if, but he said, we said this, but there isn't even a cup among the schismatics, because they don't have a cup. They don't have the Eucharist. They don't have the Lord's house. They don't have the church. So these schismatics who broke for disciplinary reasons don't have the Eucharist because they don't have a cup. They don't have the Lord's house and they don't have a church. So now let's go to Protestant ecclesiology. Okay. Where the right word and sacrament are preached, they are the churches. So the Eastern Orthodox Church preach the right, although corrupted, heavily corrupted, according to them, word and sacrament. Therefore, they are a valid church with valid sacraments, efficacious sacraments, etc. Same with Oriental Orthodox, except they have heavily corrupted word and sacrament, but the word and sacrament is there nevertheless, so they have the Eucharist. Okay, so here's the argument. The Meletians, this is very similar to my last video where I did on the Donatists. And I might do another one on the Nevatians, because they're pretty similar. Meletians held essential doctrines of the faith because there was not a reason for their schism. The Meletians differed only in ecclesiological reasons, which was they ordained outside their jurisdiction and they just rejected the authority of Peter of Alexandria. Athanasius rendered them outside the church and no Eucharist. No Eucharist, okay? Conclusion, in Athanasius' eyes, the Meletians were complete schismatics outside of the church, outside of communion, outside of the Eucharist. No Eucharist for the Meletians. Okay. However, the Protestants see the Oriental Orthodox as having the true word and sacrament, therefore a true church with the Eucharist. Although corrupted word and sacrament, they have the Eucharist nevertheless. So here's my contention how I don't think Protestant ecclesiology fits this narrative at all. Because either the Meletians are in the church because they preached the true word and sacrament, although what even is corrupted about their word and sacrament? All they did was disciplinary reasons. So, or not disciplinary, like rejecting the authority of Peter, ordaining outside their jurisdiction, etc. Schisming, essentially. So either Meletians are in the church and they have the Eucharist, so then you're against Athanasius' ecclesiology, or Meletians are outside the church and don't have Eucharist. Obviously, they are outside the church and don't have Eucharist, since Athanasius and Peter of Alexandria say this. So the Meletians are outside of the church. But, I'm carrying on. If they're in the church, if you say they're in the church, Meletians, then you oppose Athanasius, Peter of Alexandria, and you do not have the same ecclesiology as them. And Athanasius was a champion of orthodoxy, so you would probably want to hold the same ecclesiology as he did. But if they're outside the church, then I think this is a very big problem. For the Protestants. I mean, it's a problem either way. Because why are the Oriental Orthodox inside the church? Meletians held all the same doctrines of faith because it wasn't the reason for their schismatic status. Nobody said anything about the doctrines. Conclusion. There's a double standard because there's no real reason why Oriental Orthodox are in the church and Meletians are not. You don't hold the same ecclesiology as Chalcedon because they thought Oriental Orthodox are outside the church and the Eucharist. So, we have the Oriental Orthodox, who, according to the Protestants, are anathema, are deposed, everything is gone for the Oriental Orthodox, for Dioscorus at the Council of Chalcedon, etc. And if their patriarch is gone and they put a new patriarch instead of Dioscorus, then, yeah. But, for some reason, the Protestants don't see this as any, like, excommunication for the Oriental Orthodox. Because even though they're excommunicated, for some reason, according to the Protestants, they still have the Eucharist, they still have the essential doctrines of the faith, they still have everything, yeah, for some reason. But then we shift it over to the Meletians, yeah. The Meletians held all the same doctrines of the faith, except they were only deposed or deemed schismatics because of a reason of jurisdiction. And Athanasius says they don't have the Eucharist at all. So what's going on? If Athanasius was in the time of the Oriental Orthodox, so you're telling me he would, if he holds Protestant ecclesiology, he would go and he would say, no, the Oriental Orthodox, they just have, corrupted, but they're all true Christians, they all have the Eucharist, they all have efficacious everything. I really don't think so. Because if we're holding to the idea of Chalcedon thought the people who disagreed with Chalcedon were outside the church. And if you're outside the church, you're outside of Christ, according to all the church fathers, according to Cyprian, Cyril, Augustine, etc. So I really don't know if my question to any high church Protestant, I watched an Anglican person even say that the Oriental Orthodox, their schism wasn't really a schism because it's only like a small difference of faith, it's only linguistic. If it's only linguistic, then I don't see the reason for a Constantinople II. I don't see a reason for Constantinople III, which argued against the monothelitism, which is one will. So I guess we scrapped the second Constantinople, the Fifth Ecumenical Council, because I don't see a reason, because it's just a linguistic error, it's just semantical difference. scrap the third Constantinople Sixth Ecumenical Council, scrap Maximus, all his reasoning for saying there's two wills. It's not really important because there's just a semantical difference. If you read Maximus, if you read, for example, the Acts of the Lateran Council, of which Maximus was there, they see two wills as being essential to the faith. You cannot be a Christian according to them and think there's only one will in Christ, because then that's destroying the incarnation, that's doing everything. And the Oriental Orthodox think there's one will, although composite will, I don't even know what composite will even means. But yeah, bro, I think so. My question to any high church Protestant who thinks the church is just where the true word and sacrament is preached, therefore the Oriental Orthodox are a true church, not the true church, a true church, then why do the Meletians not have the Eucharist? Is it because they're schismatics? Well, Oriental Orthodox are schismatics. Why don't the Meletians have the Eucharist? Is it because they reject the authority? Oriental Orthodox reject the authority. Or even if you want to say, okay, it's just semantical difference. What about the filioque? According to Protestants, filioque is true. Eastern Orthodox are excommunicated because they don't believe in the filioque. Is the filioque just a semantical difference? Is it something very small? You don't need to, etc. It's I think this is the Meletian schism. It kind of like an actualization of theology. Kind of, you can have your theology of the church, but when it comes into practice, the Meletian schism. What do you think of the Meletians? Are they a true church? Are they a false church? Do they have the Eucharist? I think that's very a very like real way to see their ecclesiology in the early church. So I think Athanasius would hold more of a one true church idea if he thinks schismatics, just for the reason of disciplinary reasons, are outside the church completely, have no Eucharist, have no chalice, have no church at all. Like I don't see how he can hold unless someone can prove me wrong. I'd be very happy to be proved wrong. I was trying to think of an answer that I even asked a few people, but I was trying to think of an answer that a high church Protestant can give to why the Meletians do not have the Eucharist, and I don't really know, to be honest. So listen, that's my argument. I'd be very happy if someone can answer it, please. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and God bless. See you guys in the next video.